Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I am DesRoulette, and I wanted to check in with you guys to let you know that I've been coming up with a few different ideas and I've been thinking about stuff. Originally I kind of wanted to make a video about what's been happening in my life, give you guys like a quick update, what's been going on with me and why I wasn't really able to do too many videos before, but also why now I feel like I will be able to keep up with it a little bit better. I want to come up with a few different themes for different things that I can do on a daily basis so that for those of you that are following me, you can have sort of a schedule, at least for subject matter generally, to know whether or not it's something that you want to keep up with. For example, today is Monday, and I am going to be rolling out a segment called Movie Review Monday. I'll be reviewing a movie for you guys today. That'll be the purpose of this video, and also just to have somebody to talk to about things that I think are interesting or fun, like movie reviews, for example, that not everybody in regular daily conversation might be interested in. For example, today's movie is going to be Isn't It Romantic?, which is a PG-13 romantic comedy starring Rebel Wilson, Adam DeVine, Priyanka Chopra, and Liam Hemsworth. This is a movie that came out very recently. I don't really know how well it's doing in the box office. I'm a fan of Rebel Wilson. I mean, I like everything. Another reason that I want to do movie reviews is because I'm really non-discriminate about what I watch and what I spend my time watching. Really love movies. I've acted in some movies that people hated and that other people loved. Shout out to you guys. I'm just a big fan of movies in general. Nothing is too obscure or too mainstream for my interest, nor do I have a preference about genres. I like comedies, romantic comedies. I like certain kids' films, you know, or movies like Pixar films and things that are geared more toward children, even though, let's be honest, there's plenty of stuff in there for adults usually anyway. Action, horror, thriller, sci-fi. And of course a romantic comedy is no exception to that. I think that there's probably a soft spot in most people for those types of movies. They're just silly kind of nonsense. But anyway, let's start with the basics. Let's start with how I want to proceed into these types of videos. Let's talk about the actors a little bit and maybe give you a little bit of trivia. So Rebel Wilson, she's an Australian actress. She became familiar to me when she was in Bridesmaid with Kristen Wiig. You know, she was like the roommate's sister. She had gotten like the sort of back alley like van tattoo of like that big wormy guy, and you know, like the character who played her brother was telling her to put peas on it. If you saw the movie, you'll probably remember, and if not, it's going to sound crazy what I just tried to describe. But that's when I first think I saw her in a movie. I might have seen her do something small before that, but that's the first time I really remember her. And then when Pitch Perfect came out, I saw that she was in the cast. And of course, Pitch Perfect is right up my alley because I'm a singer, and I love mixing singing with a comedy script or a comedy framework, because so many movies that involve singing are just musicals, or you know, they'll be slightly more dramatic. There aren't many films that involve singing where the actors and actresses are using their real voices and are actually skilled, in my opinion. So I right off the bat was a big fan of the concept of Pitch Perfect, so of course I went and saw it and I loved it, and it's like my favorite movie. A little bit of trivia about Rebel Wilson in case anyone out there is interested. She's an Australian actress. Her great aunt was married to Walt Disney, supposedly. Originally, when she was younger, she had said that she expected she would go into some sort of mathematics as a career when she was an adult. She said she was very numerically inclined, and that she just sort of assumed that's where her life was going to go. But it turns out that she decided to pursue acting when she contracted malaria in South Africa and had an hallucination where she was an actress accepting an Oscar. And she says that it was that hallucination during that sickness that she had, that she felt like she needed to pursue that avenue in her life. So that's kind of fun and crazy. And she is allergic to dogs, despite having grown up in a house full of them, because it turns out that her mom was a dog handler. Let's see, Adam DeVine, he was co-creator, writer, co-writer, and co-star, obviously, in Workaholics, which was a Comedy Central series. I think it's done now. I initially had watched it when it was first starting out, but that's really where he kind of found his footing. So let's talk about him a little bit. So Adam DeVine, I really only have one fun fact about him, but it's really interesting. He was also starred in Pitch Perfect with Rebel Wilson. I know that they developed some kind of friendship during the course of the projects they worked on together. I don't know if they met on the set of Pitch Perfect or if they had met prior to that. You have to assume that people tend to run in the same circles. I think people who perform certain types of comedy, they were on the same level, you know, they were just kind of starting out, that they probably had experiences where they had worked together before they were in Pitch Perfect together. Maybe they just built their relationship in Pitch Perfect. I didn't look up any information about that. But the fun fact that I have about Adam DeVine is that when he was a kid, he was an all-star shortstop, and he was expected to become a professional baseball player. But when he was 11, he was crossing the street to meet up with his friends, and he was hit by a cement truck, and he was dragged 500 feet. His legs went under the first two wheels, and every bone in both of his legs was broken. His legs were basically completely crushed, and he slipped into a coma. And 2 weeks later, when he woke up, he had no mobility. The doctors didn't know whether or not he would ever walk again. So basically, he spent the next 2 years of his life in a wheelchair, trying just to heal and recover from, you know, the accident, having his legs crushed, which you can actually see in certain shots in Workaholics, and he had that movie Game Over Man on Netflix, which if I remember correctly, he's like naked, so you should check it out. But you can see his legs. You can actually see this really extensive scarring on his legs if you're looking for it. And I think a lot of people didn't know that. I think that's a really crazy fact, especially because, point I'm trying to make, when he was in the wheelchair is when he started writing comedy. He was so bored that he couldn't really go anywhere or do anything. He obviously couldn't play baseball anymore, and he didn't know if he ever would again. But he started creating characters, and he would like call into radio shows and see if he can do voices and things like that, just to probably keep himself entertained. And I guess it turned out that he really had a knack for it. But he was really honing his skills at that time, just writing comedy and working his way up to becoming a comedian. So that's pretty interesting. Let's see who else. Priyanka Chopra. She's married to Nick Jonas. I think that a lot of people probably know that. I first saw her in Baywatch, the remake with The Rock and Zac Efron, which I also thought was great. I thought that the Baywatch remake was a good time. It was over the top and entertaining and ridiculous and silly, which is all things that I love. But the first time I saw her was in that movie. In case you haven't seen it yet, I won't tell you what character she played or what her role was in the plot. But she's married to Nick Jonas. She was born in India, traveled all over India, lived all over India, lived in a couple different parts of the US with her aunt, I believe. Kind of went back and forth, went back to India, came back to the US. She ended up competing in pageants. She ended up winning the Miss World pageant in 2000. And it was after she won that title that she decided to start modeling full-time. And she ended up breaking into acting full-time. She made her debut in 2002. Let's see. And Liam Hemsworth, who you're probably also aware is married to Miley Cyrus. So they recently just got hitched, but I think they were engaged for many, many years. I think most people probably know him from being with Miley, being now married to Miley Cyrus, or having done the Hunger Games movies. He co-starred with Jennifer Lawrence in the Hunger Games. So you might recognize him from that. He's also Australian, which is fun. He was a construction worker before his older brother Luke inspired him to get into acting. Luke is also an actor, and so is Chris, his brother Chris Hemsworth, who is Thor. Clearly a successful actor as well. It turns out that Chris and Liam were both being considered for the role of Thor, but Chris ended up playing Thor, so Liam ended up in this movie. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the film. Isn't it romantic? The rundown of the film is basically that Rebel Wilson is the main character in this film. It starts with her as a little girl in her living room watching Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts, and you can tell that she's mesmerized by you know, the magic of meeting this totally charming, amazing man. And so she watches the movie and thinks it's so romantic, and she's so inspired by it, and she thinks that love is so amazing and fairy tales are special. And her mom ends up saying, this isn't realistic, you know, you don't look like Julia Roberts, this stuff like this doesn't happen for girls like us. And you know, it's like the actress is a little overweight. Rebel Wilson is a plus size woman in real life, so you understand where it's going. Who doesn't really fit into society's standards of what's, you know, beautiful or acceptable by the majority, or what you expect it to be anyway. So she grows up, you know, the movie starts, she's got this messy apartment, you know, like her alarm's going off in the morning, and she rolls out of bed and there's stuff everywhere, and like her dog is like filthy. He's like, you know, he's one of those long-haired little guys. He's got like dirt all over him. Very realistic, the way that people live in real life. I mean, people who work 50, 60 hours a week and they're single and they live alone in a tiny apartment don't have time or money probably to get their dog groomed every 3 weeks. She rolls out of bed and throws in her clothes real quick and, you know, grabs her blueprints because she's an architect. Her character's an architect, and she goes to work and she's got this little office and comes in and she has an idea for something she wants to build. That might be a big project for the architectural firm, and she comes into the room to meet with the investors, and Liam Hemsworth character asks her for coffee, you know, because she just doesn't look like doesn't look like this career woman, you know, super professional, whatever. So she goes back to her desk and she's like talking to her desk mate, who's clearly her friend, you know, who's her friend's like watching a romantic comedy. She's watching 50 First Dates. And Rebel Wilson's character makes a comment about how those movies are fake. Rebel Wilson's character has a rundown of all the things about romantic comedies that are unrealistic and unfair and that tend to really mislead little girls, and says, you know, there's always like the gay best friend. You know, we don't ever know anything about him. He never works. He never has any thoughts or feelings or interests or anything like that. It's always like the gorgeous guy like falling for the girl for almost nothing, you know. It's like you meet and all of a sudden they're intertwined forever, and then there's a happy ending. And she's like, well, what happens after that? You know, the movie ends with the wedding, or it ends with this circumstance where they're so happy and they go and they have kids or whatever. And she's like, what happens after that? You know, that's not real life. That's not realistic. But so she basically teases her for believing in these romantic comedies and like getting teared up and thinking they're great and inspirational. You know, and then the friend does her back a little and says, you know what, you need to really lighten up. Like there's this guy who likes you in our office and you didn't even notice him, which turns out to be Adam DeVine's character. You know, she's like, you have to open yourself up more to opportunities to be really seen. So, you know, she leaves for the day and she's on her way home and she gets mugged and she hits her head. And then she wakes up in the hospital. So the idea of the film is that, you know, when she wakes up, she basically wakes up into a romantic comedy, and it's also like a PG-13 comedy, so there's this running joke about how she can't curse, all her curses are blocked out, you know, but initially it's kind of like, she's like a nightmare, like she's really disappointed about it, you know, but she basically ends up going through the motions and sort of living this life. She comes home and she has this gorgeous apartment. Now her apartment is amazing and it's huge all of a sudden, and it's perfectly color coordinated, and her dog is perfectly groomed and like bright white and beautiful. And she's got the gay neighbor, you know, who's like her best friend, who just comes in and encourages her about everything. And so she tries to go live her life day by day now in this new romantic comedy world. You know, and I clearly won't give anything away because I always want people to feel interested enough that they go and watch the movies themselves. If I give you the plot, then there's no point. So without giving too much away, the movie continues. There are some funny parts. You know, what I didn't love, there's some musical numbers, and this is a strange... I think it's a strange choice. I've seen a lot of movies where directors, writers, or whomever have chosen to do that. You know, it's like a comedy and they insert like a musical number. It's always a little awkward, I think. And, you know, it's like very clearly like pre-recorded, like, you know, produced in a professional studio with like all the bells and whistles and the noises in the background, and there's like a whole brass section. But this scene is she ends up singing karaoke, and she sings like a Whitney Houston song, which is ambitious anyway. And it's not great, you know, but it's funny. So there's definitely parts of it. It gets so ridiculous at some point that you can accept that song because it is kind of silly and kind of funny, but then there's like 3 key changes. It's just a little over the top. But it's a little cringy, you know. I think putting a musical number, it's dangerous. It can be a little shifty. It can be a little cringy. So I wasn't totally sold on that. I didn't love it. There turns out to be another musical number later in the film. At the end, basically, they end it with like a musical number. I mean, I won't tell you what it's about. I can't tell you if it's a happy song or a sad song or what happens. But that one was definitely the cringiest. I think that the karaoke scene was much more palatable than the other musical number. So just be prepared for that. So maybe if you force your husband to watch it with you the way that I did, you can warn him beforehand that there's going to be some cringy musical numbers, but just to like stick with it. Because there's, you know, it's fine. It was fine. It was good. There was a couple parts that were funny. I watched it to the end, and so did Brad, so it couldn't have been that horrible, because there have been movies that we've turned on that we actually haven't made our way all the way through. But ultimately, you know, it was good. I liked it. I think she's funny. I think Adam DeVine is funny. You know, but it was good. It was okay. I would give it like, you know, 3.5 out of 5 stars, I guess. Stars? I need like a system of measurement. Let me see, as we go on, I'll try and make myself more organized so I have more like a concise answer, rating, explanation, or rating systems for you. Yeah, it was good. There was a couple cute outfits in there that I liked. I think it's always nice to see a more full-figured woman with like a good costume design in a film. Obviously, her character sort of goes from like the real world person who has like the dumpy wardrobe and is like very basic to the romantic comedy world where she's styled really expertly and beautifully, and everybody in the office looks great. But it was interesting enough. I would watch it again. I don't think I would buy it, but I would say if you're into movies the same way that I'm into, and you're not expecting it to be amazing all the time, you're just kind of watching it for entertainment and just watching it for a few jokes and to see how you feel, then go for it. I suggest that you do it. I thought it was fine. So yeah, but I don't want to, you know, I don't want to give away too much, you know, because it probably becomes pretty predictable the more details that I give you. Obviously, there's, you know, character development in the real world and character development in the romantic comedy world, that things happen and, you know, new characters are introduced and our new way of seeing people clearly is introduced. So I feel like it got like 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. I want to say like 65% on Rotten Tomatoes, stuff like that. So it seems that my opinion is pretty consistent, like across the board. Like people feel that it's, you know, slightly more than halfway through, right? You know, if 6.5 out of 10 is pretty much the same as 3.5 out of 5. So that's all I have for today's movie review Monday. I might try to put together a couple more videos just today while I have this going, and maybe I can schedule them for release to keep you guys interested. If you have any suggestions for any other movies that you want to see me review, then you can leave your comments down below. Please hit the like and the subscribe button. I still haven't gotten to 100 subscribers, which obviously I'm not going to have people subscribing to me or caring about what I'm doing unless I'm consistent and keeping up with it. And I am working on that. But I do want to try to get to 100 subscribers as soon as possible, just so that I can set my custom URL, because I think that'll help me as well feel like I've taken this step to set myself up so that I can really start, you know, sharing things with people and addressing people's interests and things. It's much easier to send a link that's like youtube.com/DesRoulette than send a link that's like youtube.com/987GFYX =, and there's like another slash in there and like an exclamation point and a J. There's a couple Y's, I don't know. So my goal is to get to 100 subscribers. Also, next week I will be reviewing Captain Marvel, which is Marvel's follow-up to Infinity Wars. It's Marvel's first film starring a female lead. There's already been some controversy about that. I have not looked that deep into it. I actually tend to stay off of the internet in regards to people's opinions on things. People get really excited about, you know, having a platform, the internet, and being able to give their opinion, which is fine because we're all entitled to our opinions. I just choose not to read it because those things just are not necessary for my life. I don't need to get angry about the ignorant things that people say. So I will be reviewing Captain Marvel next week. So for those of you that are interested in that, it does come out this Thursday. Obviously, if you're an avid fan of the Marvel universe, you're probably going to see it yourself. I'm going to see it on Friday. But if you're just kind of like interested in checking it out, you're not really sure, you want somebody's opinion and you trust me, then this time next week I will have hopefully a more in-depth review for that movie. I won't tell you anything more than what's in the trailer, but I'll break it down a little bit for those that are not that familiar. So that's it for today. Make sure you tune in next week if that sounds like something you're interested in. And if not, or even if so, feel free to put anything below in the comments of any movies that are already out, even movies that are older. For right now, I feel like I'm just going to be reviewing newer films, but inevitably it's going to come to a time where there is not a new release that week that I'm interested in, or maybe something that is accessible by me at the time. So I'm perfectly open to reviewing things that are older, even if they're movies that you've seen before and you're just interested in my theory or my opinion or my interpretation of things. Just leave it down below in the comments and let me know, and I will definitely 100% get to all of your suggestions, or I'll explain why, or I'll explain why I won't if there's a circumstance that I just don't feel comfortable doing it. But we'll see. I'm thinking that maybe I'll become more comfortable as time goes on, continue not reading the nasty stuff. So stick with me and I'll be here and I'll make you laugh one day or give you some kind of interesting or useful advice. And if you do happen to see Isn't It Romantic, feel free to leave your opinion down below as well, because I would like to see if I misrepresented it, or if I missed anything, or if I probably could have said more, given you more background without giving too much away. But, you know, I mean, come on, all these movies have the same formula, don't they? Anyway, so I will see you guys super soon. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know a bunch of you did just recently subscribe to my channel because I put a post out on Facebook, my personal account, asking you guys if you hadn't subscribed yet, just please come over and subscribe. Obviously, you don't have to turn on the bell notification if you don't really care, but I do still want to acknowledge those that did come and sign up, that did come over and subscribe, just because I appreciate that you supported me just when I asked you to, regardless of whether you care about the content or not, which how could you, because I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what the content's gonna be. So we're in this together, buddy. Thank you all, and I will see you super soon.